So today, um, we're going to be doing a deep dive on orcas.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got a ton of sources here. And, I think we're really going to uncover some pretty interesting stuff today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, you're probably already kind of interested in orcas.
Right.
But get this, orcas are actually dolphins.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that they're the largest member of the oceanic dolphin family.
I know, isn't that crazy? I remember when I first learned that, I was like, what?
Yeah, it kind of blows your mind a little bit when you think about it.
It does. And speaking of things that kind of blow your mind, you always hear orcas called killer whales.
Yeah.
Where'd that name come from?
Well, I think it probably came from some of the earliest people to observe them. They would see them hunting and taking down large whales, and I think that name just kind of stuck.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, but it does give kind of a misleading impression of them.
It does, because they're apex predators, but they're also incredibly intelligent and social.
Absolutely. And, some cultures actually revere them, like the Haida and the Tlingit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they view them as powerful spirits and ancestors.
Hmm. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Well, let's get into their brains.
Okay.
I've heard that they're incredibly complex.
Oh, yeah, they have an expanded neocortex and a very highly developed limbic system.
Okay, so break that down for me a little bit. What does that actually mean?
So the neocortex in humans, anyway, is associated with things like language and problem solving. And the limbic system is that's the emotional center of the brain. It processes things like emotions and memories.
Okay, so are we saying that orcas have, like, complex emotions like grief and joy?
Well, that's what researchers are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
But there is some pretty compelling evidence that that might be the case.
Like, what kind of evidence?
Well, think about Tahlequah, that orca that carried her deceased calf for 17 days.
Okay.
That's pretty profound and suggests that there's something more going on than just instinct.
I mean, 17 days, that's incredible. And when you think about their social structures, like, they live in these tight-knit family units, right?
Right. They're called pods, and they're matrilineal, which means that they're led by the mothers and grandmothers, and these pods stay together sometimes for their entire lives.
Wow. And each pod has its own unique dialect.
Exactly.
So, like, they have their own languages.
It's like having different human families, each with their own slang, and regional accent researchers can actually identify which pod an orca belongs to just by listening to its calls.
That's wild. So they're not born knowing how to speak orca. They have to learn it.
Right. It suggests that there's a really remarkable capacity for cultural transmission.
Wow. So what does that tell us about them?
Well, it hints at a level of social complexity that we see in very few species.
Man, it really makes you realize how little we know about these animals, especially when you consider their hunting techniques. I've heard they have some crazy moves.
They're masters of adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that a lot of these things aren't just instinctive. They actually learn and refine them over time and pass them down through generations.
So give me some examples. What are some of these hunting techniques?
Well, one that's pretty amazing is called wave washing.
Wave wash.
Wave washing, yeah. So they'll work together to create waves
Wow.
powerful enough to knock seals right off ice floes.
Wait, they create the waves on purpose to wash seals off the ice.
On purpose, it takes incredible teamwork and coordination.
That is amazing. What else?
Well, how about intentionally beaching themselves to catch prey on land?
What?
Yeah, it's called strand feeding, and it's a very risky maneuver, but these orcas have mastered it.
So they just beach themselves on purpose to grab, like, a seal or something?
Pretty much they'll grab a seal or sea lion, then they use the rising tide to slide back into deeper water.
Man, that's intense.
It is.
So how do they perceive the world underwater?
Well, that's where echolocation comes in.
Echolocation?
Yeah, they've developed this incredible sixth sense that allows them to basically see their environment using sound.
Wait, so they can see using sound? How does that work?
So they emit a series of clicks, and then they listen for the echoes that bounce back.
Oh.
And by analyzing those echoes, they can figure out the size and shape and distance and even speed of objects.
So they're, like, making a mental map of their surroundings using sound?
Yeah, it's mind-bogglingly
Like,
precise.
that is so wild. So they can tell that much just from sound.
Yeah, they can even distinguish between different species of fish just based on the echoes alone.
Wow. I am starting to see why they're at the top of the food chain.
Right.
It's like they have superpowers. All right, let's talk about some of their physical adaptations.
Okay.
I mean, they are just built for life in the ocean.
Every part of their body is optimized for survival.
Like what?
Well, take their dorsal fin, for instance. It's not just for show. It provides incredible stability, especially at high speeds. And males, their dorsal fins can reach up to 6 feet tall.
6 feet? That's taller than me.
It is. And then they also have a thick layer of blubber
Yeah.
beneath their skin, and that acts as insulation in cold water, and it also serves as an energy reserve.
Okay.
And their teeth, perfectly interlocking and incredibly sharp.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's designed for grasping, slippery prey.
All right, well, I'm officially in awe of orca anatomy.
Yeah.
But their survival isn't just about their physical strength. It's also about their complex communication.
Oh, absolutely.
We talk about the dialects, but their vocal repertoire goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
So what else can they do with all those clicks and whistles and calls?
Well, they can signal danger, coordinate hunting strategies, identify themselves, even call to each other across vast distances.
Wow, so it's like they're having full-blown conversations down there.
Pretty much.
And I've heard that they can even mimic the calls of other species. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. They've been observed mimicking the sounds of dolphins and sea lions and even some birds.
No way. Why would they do that?
Well, we don't know for sure, but some scientists think it might be a way to gather information about their surroundings or even maybe to deceive potential prey.
That is so sneaky.
It's really remarkable.
It is. All right, so we've talked about their intelligence and their communication, but it kind of makes you wonder about their emotional world, right?
Right.
Are they really as emotional as researchers are starting to believe?
I think we're starting to realize that we underestimated the emotional capacity of a lot of animals
Yeah.
for a long time, and orcas are a great example of that.
So what kind of evidence are we talking about here?
Well, one of the most powerful examples is the story of Tahlequah.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that female orca who carried her deceased calf for 17 days?
I do, yeah.
Over 1,000 miles. It was heartbreaking.
It was. I remember seeing those images and just feeling so much for her.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Tahlequah. Her whole pod seemed to be in mourning.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
It does. It's like a reminder that we share this planet with creatures who experience a range of emotions,
Absolutely.
just like we do.
And grief is just one example that researchers have observed orcas displaying empathy, cooperation, even altruism.
Wow.
It really points to a complex emotional world that we're only beginning to understand.
So it's not just about survival instincts with these creatures.
No.
There's something much deeper going on.
Yeah, and when you consider their long lifespans.
Oh, yeah. How long do they live?
Well, females can live up to 90 years.
90 years. Wow.
Yeah.
What about the males?
Males tend to have shorter lifespans, usually around 60 years.
Yeah.
But here's another fascinating fact. Female orcas experience menopause,
Serious.
much like humans.
Menopause in orcas. That's wild.
It is, and it raises some really interesting questions about their social dynamics.
So what's the significance of menopause in orcas?
Well, it means that they have this period of their lives where they're no longer reproducing, but they remain active and vital members of their pods.
All right, so they become like the wise elders.
Exactly. They've got all this knowledge about food sources and migration routes and social dynamics, and they pass that knowledge on to their offspring.
That's incredible. It's like having a living library of orca wisdom swimming right alongside you.
It really is, and it highlights how important those social bonds and intergenerational connections are for orca survival.
This is all so fascinating.
I know, right?
But I know there's a darker side to this story.
Yeah.
Things aren't exactly easy for orcas these days, are they?
No, unfortunately, they face some really serious threats, and a lot of them are a direct result of human activities.
Okay, let's get real. What are the biggest challenges facing orcas today?
Well, one of the major concerns is pollution.
Okay.
Things like PCBs,
Yes.
those toxic chemicals, they can accumulate in their bodies, and it affects their immune system and their reproductive health.
That's terrible.
It is, and then there's prey depletion.
Prey depletion.
Yeah, overfishing, reduces the availability of their main food sources and forces them to compete for dwindling resources.
It's sad to think that we're having such a negative impact on these incredible animals.
It is, and then there's noise pollution from all the boat traffic.
Oh, yeah.
All that noise interferes with their echolocation and their communication.
Sounds like we're bombarding them with this constant cacophony of sound.
Exactly. It disrupts their whole way of life.
Man, we really need to do better.
We do.
So what are some things that are being done to help? And what can people like us do to make a difference?
Well, there are a number of organizations and researchers that are working really hard on orca conservation.
Okay.
They're conducting research, they're advocating for policy changes to protect orcas and their habitats, and they're raising public awareness.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more we understand about orcas, the better equipped we'll be to help them.
Mhm.
But what about individual actions?
Well, supporting sustainable fishing practices is a big one.
Oh, yeah.
By choosing seafood that's been caught responsibly, we can help reduce the pressure on orca food sources.
That makes sense. It's all about making conscious choices.
Exactly. And we can also advocate for responsible birding activities.
Okay.
Reducing boat speeds and maintaining a safe distance from orcas can help minimize noise pollution and the risk of collisions.
So it's all about respecting their space.
Exactly. Every little bit helps.
I'm feeling inspired to learn more about orcas and what I can do to help.
Me too. And that's what's so exciting about orcas. They're full of surprises. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we still don't know.
It's true.
Yeah.
Our exploration of these magnificent creatures is far from over.
It's just beginning.
We've covered so much ground already, but there's still so much more to uncover.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into the world of orcas.
We'll be right back after a short break. We're back and ready to learn more about orcas.
Before the break, we were talking about all those threats that orcas are facing.
Yeah, it's a lot. Pollution, not enough food, all that noise.
Yeah, it's tough, but I'm trying to stay optimistic.
Well, you should, because there's a lot of really amazing research being done, and, the more we understand them, the better we can protect them.
Okay, so what are researchers finding out? Like, what kind of breakthroughs are happening?
Well, technology is really helping a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're using drones now and underwater microphones so they can study orcas without disturbing them.
Wow, so it's like we're getting a front row seat to their lives.
Pretty much. And they're gathering so much data, everything from their social interactions to their hunting patterns.
Speaking of hunting patterns, I'm still fascinated by that whole mimicking thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like they can imitate the calls of other species. It's so cool.
It is. And we're still not 100% sure why they do it, but some scientists think it could be a way for them to gather information about their surroundings.
Oh, interesting.
Or even maybe a way to, deceive prey.
So they're sneaky.
Yeah, it's just another example of how intelligent and adaptable they are.
It is for sure. And that intelligence is really obvious when you look at their hunting techniques.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about wave washing and strand feeding, but are there other ones that are blowing people's minds?
Oh, yeah. They're constantly refining these techniques and coming up with new variations. For example, in some areas, they've figured out how to use their tails to create a pressure wave that stuns fish before they can even scatter.
It's incredible. Like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy. And then in other areas, they work together to herd salmon into shallow inlets where it's easier to catch them.
It's teamwork.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So they're like master strategists.
They are. And it's that adaptability that has allowed them to be so successful across such a wide range of habitats.
That's true. But even the most skilled survivors need our help, right?
They do.
So what can we do to be better allies to orcas? We talked about individual actions, but what about the bigger picture?
Well, I think on a global scale, it's really important to tackle those big issues like pollution and overfishing and climate change.
Those are big problems.
They are. They require a lot of cooperation.
Yeah, but what can we do right now?
Well, I think it starts with just being more mindful of our own habits.
Okay.
Reducing our reliance on single-use plastics and choosing sustainable seafood options.
Right.
And supporting businesses that are trying to be environmentally responsible.
It's all about being conscious consumers.
Exactly. And we can also educate others.
Mm-hmm.
The more people who understand the challenges that orcas are facing and how we can help, the better.
Yeah, knowledge is power, right?
It really is.
So what else are researchers learning about orcas? Anything new and exciting?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really fascinating is that we're starting to understand the cultural diversity within the orca world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, remember how we were talking about each pod having its own unique dialect?
I do, yeah.
Well, it's more than just language. Those dialects reflect cultural traditions and knowledge.
So you're saying that orca pods have distinct cultures just like different human groups do?
Yeah, researchers are finding that different orca populations have different ways of hunting and socializing and even playing.
That's amazing. Are you serious?
Yeah, and these behaviors are passed down through generations.
It's like we're getting a glimpse into a whole other world.
Yeah, and it really challenges our understanding of what it means to be intelligent.
So what kind of questions are researchers asking about these orca cultures?
Well, how do these cultural traditions arise and how do they evolve and what can they teach us about the orca mind?
Yeah, it's like a whole new frontier of orca research.
It is, and the more we learn, the more we realize how much we still don't know.
It's true, but that's what makes it so exciting, right?
It does, and it's also what makes it so important to protect them.
I agree. So what can people do if they want to learn more about orcas?
Oh, there are so many great resources out there, books and documentaries and websites, and you can even visit aquariums and research centers.
And don't forget to support organizations that are dedicated to orca conservation.
Yes, absolutely.
As we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm really struck by how resilient orcas are.
Me too.
Despite everything they're up against, they're still out there thriving in some of the toughest environments on the planet.
Yeah, their intelligence and their adaptability and their social bonds are really incredible.
They give me hope.
Me too.
I really believe that with our help, they can continue to survive and flourish.
I think so too. It's our responsibility to be their voice and to protect them.
And to keep learning about them.
Yeah.
There's always something new to discover.
Always.
Orcas are a symbol of the wildness and beauty of our planet.
They are, and it's up to us to make sure that they're around for future generations to enjoy.
It's amazing to think about all the things that orcas can do.
Yeah.
But are there any other adaptations that we haven't talked about yet? I mean, how do they survive in such a challenging environment?
Well, we talked about echolocation,
Right.
but their other senses are really impressive too.
Really? Like what?
Well, their eyesight is incredible, both above and below the surface.
Oh, wow.
They can actually adjust to different light levels.
So they can see just as well in the depths of the ocean as they can at the surface.
Pretty much. And they can also focus their vision really precisely so they can lock onto a target, even in murky water.
Oh, wow. That's pretty important for hunting, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
What about their hearing? Can they hear well underwater?
Oh, yeah, their hearing is amazing.
Really?
Yeah, they can hear a huge range of sounds, everything from like the tiny clicks of their prey to the calls of other orcas that are miles away.
So it's like they're listening to this whole underwater world that we're completely oblivious to.
Exactly.
Wow. And what about their sense of touch?
Oh, they have a very well-developed sense of touch.
Really?
They can feel vibrations in the water,
Huh.
which helps them locate prey and navigate.
Wow, so it's like they're feeling the pulse of the ocean.
Pretty much.
It's incredible how they use all of their senses to experience their environment.
It really is.
So you were talking about those different types of orcas, those ecotypes.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about the differences between them? Like, what makes a resident orca different from a transient orca?
Sure. So resident orcas, they tend to stick to specific coastal areas.
Okay.
They live in large, stable pods, and they mainly eat fish, particularly salmon.
So they're kind of like the homebodies of the orca world.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Okay, what about transient orcas?
So transient orcas are much more nomadic. They travel long distances in smaller groups.
Okay.
And they hunt marine mammals like seals and sea lions and even other whales.
Whoa, so they're like the adventurers, the ones that are always on the move.
Yeah, they're always looking for their next meal.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about offshore orcas?
So offshore orcas are a little more mysterious.
Yeah.
They live in the open ocean, far from the coast, and we think they primarily eat sharks and schooling fish.
So they're like the deep sea divers, the ones that we know the least about.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's amazing to think that all these different types of orcas with their different diets and lifestyles are all part of the same species.
It really is. It shows how adaptable they are.
It does. So what's next for orca research? What are scientists most excited about these days?
Well, technology is really opening up a lot of new possibilities.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, they're using genetic analysis to track orca movements and to understand family relationships.
Oh, wow. So it's like building a family tree for the whole orca population.
Pretty much. And it's helping us learn a lot about their social structures.
That's so cool.
Um,
What else?
And they're also using artificial intelligence to analyze all that acoustic data, all those clicks and whistles.
Yeah.
And it's helping us identify patterns and understand their communication in ways that we couldn't before.
Wow. So we might actually be able to decode their language one day.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
It would, but, we've talked about all the threats that orcas are facing.
All right.
So what are some of the things that are being done to protect them? What gives you hope for the future?
Well, one of the most promising things is the establishment of marine protected areas. These are like safe havens where orcas can feed and breed without being disturbed.
Okay, so it's kind of like creating sanctuaries for them.
Exactly. And there are also efforts to reduce pollution and noise pollution
Right.
in those areas where orcas live.
Yeah, I mean, we have to clean up our act right.
We do. And there's also this growing movement to promote responsible whale watching.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Yeah, educating tourists and boaters about how to observe orcas without stressing them out.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly.
Between
Yeah.
appreciating them and respecting their space.
And one of the things that I'm most excited about is the increasing collaboration between scientists and conservationists and indigenous communities.
Oh, why is that so important?